Tonight, or early hours of tomorrow morning, 2 o'clock to be exact, the new NBA season tips off. And of course, the LA Lakers will be looking to defend the title. Now, to discuss this a little bit more, I'm joined by our resident NBA analyst, Sbu Shongwe. Sbu, thank you so much for coming into studio once again.
Absolutely.
It's a big pleasure. Let's start with what I just mentioned. LA Lakers looking to defend their title. The GM of the general manager of NBA tipped them as the favorites. Can they do it again?
Well, I mean, it's his job. He has to say they're favorites, right? But if anything, if we took anything from last year, that is that the Lakers are the team to beat. Rob Pelinka has done a fantastic job post Magic Johnson leaving the team. But you look at, I mean, even that roster, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, they've added Dennis Schroeder, they've added Montrezl Harrell, who came from the Clippers, actually. So it's going to be quite a fun season. I think they might repeat, actually.
Yeah, I mean, big additions that you speak of there. And of course, that's what happens in the off-season in basketball. A lot of signings.
Absolutely.
Some of your best signings, some of the teams that you think made the best purchases in the off-season?
I do think the Lakers, as far as just being a complete team, took a step forward more than everybody else. And it's funny because the team generally that wins the championship tends to be a bit complacent. But the Lakers, with the acquisition of Schroeder, with the acquisition of even Wesley Matthews, who came from Milwaukee, from Giannis Antetokounmpo's team. So they did a great job. I felt like the Bucks also took a bit of a step forward with Drew Holiday, one of the best defensive players in the league right now, a very likable guy. It's a pleasure to have him in the locker room as well, So there's a couple of teams that took really, really big steps, and I'm interested to see how the season's going to pan out.
Somebody asked me a little bit earlier on LeBron James, when is he going to hang up his boots? When he's going to throw them over that bit wire that's hanging in the street.
Yeah.
How much more of LeBron, King James, are we expecting to see?
Look, he signed a 2-year, $85 million contract that gives him over $40 million a year. Easily one of the highest paid players in the league, if not the highest. I think maybe Giannis will be with his new deal. But the King, man, he's 36. He doesn't look like he's going to slow down anytime soon. He's still doing it at the highest level. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a prime that lasted this long. Jordan played 6 finals MVP, 6 championships. I mean, but what LeBron is doing right now for me is amazing, and it only adds to this GOAT conversation. Remember, we always talk about, even you and I, off air, we always talk about who's the GOAT, what's the criteria for being a GOAT. But I think it's very interesting, the conversation that we're having now as basketball fans at large.
You speak about he'll be playing until 36, or at least if it's up to his contract.
Yeah, 38.
Paul George has signed a 5-year deal. He's also going to be looking about 36, 37.
Yes.
Is it worth signing Paul George at this age?
I think we're a bit, the fan, including myself, a little bit, when I first heard of the deal. I think we're taking whatever happened in the bubble last year, that meltdown. It wasn't just Paul George who melted down. Kawhi Leonard also has to take the blame as well. So what happened in the bubble really took his stock down. I think his currency in the NBA really went down after not being able to even shoot in the fourth quarter in Game 7 against Denver. They lost from 3-1 down. But I think the deal itself, look, Paul George is still a perennial all-star. He's still one of the easily top 10 players in the league right now. And he's a two-way player also, Buhle. He's not just a guy who scores like James Harden. Not to throw in at insult to injury because of what's happening now in Houston.
Yes.
But Paul George is a perennial all-star, two-way player. He was a nominee for MVP 2 years ago, or even last year as well. He's a phenomenal player. I think that deal is worth it. Steve Ballmer, obviously the owner of the Clippers, feels like he's made the right decision.
You speak about James Harden. I want to talk about Antetokounmpo.
Yeah.
Milwaukee just signed him. You mentioned big bucks, $220 million. James Harden is looking to be traded. Could he be going to Milwaukee? Because, I mean, Antetokounmpo can't really shoot, but, I mean, he is a big player.
Yeah.
James Harden might just fill that role for him.
I think you look at the NBA, right, in terms of the markets. It's almost like moving from Kaiser Chiefs to Golden Arrows or to Amazon. Nobody wants to go to Milwaukee. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Nobody wants to go from Miami to Milwaukee. Nobody wants to go from Houston to Milwaukee. It's a small market. Yeah. Giannis, when he came into the league, he came in with no expectations at all. And so he became now what he became, with no pressure of having to hold an entire franchise together. Only now that he's a superstar, maybe those expectations are starting to come to light. But, I mean, I don't see James Harden going to Houston, man. If I had to put my money on it, I would say Giannis was going to leave Milwaukee and possibly join forces with him in Houston with Harden. But I mean, at this point, I don't see it happening.
So no Harden in Milwaukee.
No Harden in Milwaukee.
Okay,
absolutely not.
And to make reference to your reference about Kaizer Chiefs, look, the way they're playing at the moment when they sit on the log, I think some players
they
wouldn't
might
mind.
as well be arrows there. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about it as I said. I was like, maybe that's a really bad example. But I mean, sports is sports, you know.
Yeah, and I do think some players wouldn't mind. And sport is sport, and which is the beautiful thing. No bubble this time, no COVID-19 to speak of. You spoke about all the meltdowns that happened. It was a weird season last season because of this. Some teams will have fans, others won't. Will they be boosted by that playing at their home grounds?
I think they will, because I mean, what fans do for you as a player is give you that extra boost of energy. You know, it's always important to have people cheering for you, whether you're up, whether you're down. And so it's a difficult environment for the players. LeBron James, on one of the podcasts that he was on a few weeks ago, said he feels like this championship is one of the most difficult championships, or the most difficult actually, in the history of the NBA, particularly because you're in a bubble, you're in a controlled environment, you can't see your family, you can't see your friends, you can't see your kids. So much of what these guys do, even in South Africa, if you look at the DSTV Premiership, is about habit. They're routine people, right? And so if you get out of that routine or you're interrupted, it doesn't really work out. That's why Paul George, he even said mentally he wasn't okay, you know? So I think having the fans and being back at their normal arenas will give them a boost for sure.
I mean, how much does COVID-19 come into play here? Because, I mean, the players will still be going home. They can contract the virus. And then that just throws another span into the works.
Yes, I mean, we've seen it with the NFL and other leagues as well, even with the Premier League. Sadio Mane tested positive. At some point, Cristiano tested positive. Look, at the end of the day, we've got to understand we've got to live with this for as long as possible, for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, it's the onus is on the players. The responsibility is on the players. There's daily testing, obviously, with every sports league, with every sports team, but the players themselves have to be responsible. In one of the NFL teams I saw the other day, a coach and I think an athletic trainer were fined $250,000 for not wearing a mask during a game. So it tells you how serious this thing is, and teams in general want to set the tone for normal civilians like you and me.
Of course. A team that will want to set the tone for all the other teams are the Clippers, the other team from Los Angeles. But
the poor cousin.
The poor cousin. and people have been saying that they're overrated. I mean, you know, we know that to get to the NBA Finals, they'll have to get past Lakers, who are currently the hottest team in the league.
Past the king.
Exactly, past the king. But can the Clippers, you know, should we actually be giving them that chance? Or is it unfair for us to judge them before the season's even tipped off?
Buhle, if you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in your team, you're on national TV already. Think about where the Clippers play. They used to play on the local TV stations. Now you're national pretty much every game, right? That's what comes with the expectation. If you earn over 30 million in the NBA, you've got to deliver. There's no way we can say, oh, the Clippers this, the Clippers that. They have the money. Steve Ballmer has really done a great job of building that team. Now the guys have to go and perform. So there's a lot at play here as far as the Clippers are concerned. They're even building their own arena, just by the way, because they're moving away from, you know, tied to the Lakers all the time in perpetuity. You know, so they want to create their own identity. They want to sort of move away from that stigma of constantly losing. And I think the playoffs last year didn't do them any favors. But let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens with Miami Heat. We're mentioning everyone except the team that made it to the NBA Finals, pushed you know, the LA Lakers all the way to Game 6. Where do we see them ending up in their conference?
I think, you know, I think the people and the viewers that are watching this need to first understand that you became a Jimmy Butler fan like this in the playoffs last year.
He was brilliant. He was on fire, the man.
Phenomenal. But I think having him, having the young boys as well, Tyler Hero, all these different guys, they wanted James Harden. But I think that the trade talks have now sort of died down. I don't really rank them high, the Heat. You know, they did something spectacular last year, making it all the way to the final. But let's also forget, it was under really, really, you know, crazy circumstances.
Weird.
So I don't know from a consistency standpoint, can they still do? They've got one of the best owners not owners necessarily, but guy who runs the team in Pat Riley, who's a previous head coach in the NBA. So let's see how it happens. I think in the East, they may be fifth, possibly sixth. They'll make the playoffs.
I mean, they were fifth seeded last season.
I don't want to take it from the finals last year and now say, oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to the Heat. Let's park that bus for now.
Okay, cool. And I mean, they were fifth seeded last season, going into the finals, so I understand that fully. Let's bring it home a little bit, Sbu, to South Africa in particular. I mean, we know that the game is growing faster outside of the country, Central Africa, the Nigerias. In South Africa, we still seem to be lacking, and I mean, we've got all these facilities in the country, we've got all these, you know, sports professionals, and yet we cannot seem to get basketball right in this country?
At some point, basketball, not just in Africa, not just in the continent, but in the world, it was considered one of the fastest or the fastest growing sport. What happened in South Africa, I can't really pinpoint it to one thing and say it was this or it was that. At some point, the government intervened, Department of Sports, when Fikile Mbalula was still Minister of Sports, and they subsidized the league called the Basketball National League, the BNL, right? It ran. The fans were packing that stadium at Wembley, downtown Johannesburg. Things were really happening. It looked like they were about to get sponsorship. I don't really know where it all went wrong. I'm not an insider there, so I don't know. I'm not privy really to the information there. But what I can tell you is they're trying now to get a structure, or different people at different governing body all together to start this thing afresh.
Now,
so hopefully it'll work.
I watch BNL from time to time, of course, and the quality, the difference in quality from here, obviously it's not going to be NBA quality, but anywhere else in the world, even in Europe, it seems like we're lagging pretty far behind. I mean, why would that be the case?
We are. I mean, isn't it almost like football? No shade to local football, but I see, certain players that are in the professional ranks. A ball is coming here, you can't trap it. And I'm like, well, you've been playing football since you were at like 6.
It's your job.
So I think fundamentally, as a country, especially with regards to sport, rugby is a different thing, cricket is a different thing, and I think that's because they invest in their youth and they invest in them early with basketball and, maybe soccer here and there, which shouldn't be. It should be a lot further along as far as football. But basketball is the same. It has the same sort of sickness in a way. I think fundamentally, from a young age, we don't instill those things. So those guys, by the time they play, they're 16, they're not fundamentally sound, they've got the height, they've got the body, they've got the brain for it. But it's a bit too late to instill some things, Whereas with the States and Europe, these guys start playing very, very early. Case in point, your favorite player in the world now, Jimmy Butler.
Let's leave it there. Sbu Shongwe, thank you so much. Look, a lot of work still need to be done in South Africa, but really looking forward to the tip-off of the new NBA season. It gets underway tonight at about 2 o'clock in the morning, actually, the new NBA season. It's going to be a thrilling season. It must be, because, it's under this new COVID-19 regulations, and at least they'll be playing at home, but still so much that we don't know is going to happen, of course, and that is just the world that we live in at the moment.